Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here. Welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Today, I am bringing you another awesome member of our diabetes community. Bennet Dunlap is the father of four, two of who live with type 1 diabetes. Like millions of Americans, Bennet tries to be successful with type 2 diabetes himself. He has created a variety of social media projects, including the advocacy campaign Strip Safely, Drinking with Diabetes, a resource for families sending type 1 students to college, the Diabetes Patient Advocacy Coalition, and his blog, Your Diabetes May Vary. Bennet is an integral member of the Sparrow Rose Save a Child community, supporting the IDF Life for a Child program. So Bennet, with that amazing bio there, how are you today?
I am excellent. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. So
and
thank you.
See, I have athletic gear in the background too. This is my winter bike.
Yeah, no, I know. And actually, as many people may know, I follow Bennet on Strava, which you should all jump on Strava and follow Bennet, which I don't do Strava anywhere near enough, but we can like when he rides his bike. Actually, funny enough, Bennet and I are semi-neighbors. I think we live about 30 minutes from one another. But so tell us, so obviously you have a lot of involvement with diabetes, both with yourself and 2 out of 4 children having diabetes. That's got to be a level of experience that many of us have no idea about. So why don't you start by maybe tell us about your introduction to diabetes in general, if it was your children that had it first, and then tell us about your experience with type 2 and just how that has gone.
Well, so a couple of years ago, by a couple I mean about a dozen, maybe a little more, our number 3 kid was, having all kinds of weird symptoms. And as a result, we took him to the doctor for a blood draw, and they couldn't get blood out. It was like peanut butter. He was really dehydrated, and we sat around all day long waiting for results, watching Star Wars. And my wife and my physician's office became increasingly concerned as the day went on, and they finally took him to the ER, and they took a blood sugar test, and they sent him right to Children's Hospital. He was 9, and they said he's got diabetes. And of course, I figured I fed the kid too much sugar. I didn't know anything about diabetes, and we went on a very rapid course of learning. And about 14 months later, we were in Disney World for a family vacation, and we were planning on meeting a bunch of people and having a good time. And the first night we're there, we take my daughter out, and she has a giant thing of chocolate milk, and she gets really lethargic, and she doesn't want dessert. And we kind of noticed at the pool she was skinnier than we thought she was. We hadn't seen her, it was December, we hadn't seen her in a bathing suit since August, and it didn't really fit her right anymore. It was a little loose. And then I know every bathroom in Walt Disney World because we have 4 kids. And I visited every one of them that day, and my wife started going, let's see, skinny, lethargic with sugar, peeing a lot. Where have I seen this before? So we took her back to the hotel. We checked her blood sugar, and the meter said, "Hi, how you doing?"
Yeah. We all love that.
So we had 2. So that was sort of our very rapid introduction to the world of type 1 diabetes as a family. My father has been living with type 2 for a very long time, but my father was, that the World War II greatest generation where you don't talk about anything. So I didn't know much about his experience. And a few years after my kids, I went in for my annual physical, which I do every 3 years because I'm a guy. And
go every 3 years. Honestly, a lot of guys, you say annual and you say 3 years. I know guys that go 10 and more years. So
right. So I'm on the front end of the curve doing my annual physical every 3 years. Yeah. And the doc says, "Well, I got to tell you about your fasting blood sugar." And I said, "Oh, really? What is it?" And he said it was a 108, and I remember laughing in his face, just hysterically, because in my world, a 108 fasting blood sugar is like a gift from God. And he was trying to impress upon me that this was something that I should take seriously. And over the subsequent visits, it started to creep up, and I would modify my behavior a little bit, and I did a little bit of food modification, and it slowed it down, and finally it got to the point where, and I don't like checking my blood sugar at home myself because in my mindset, I can adjust that number instantly because that's what the kids do. And I can't do that with type 2 because I'm not on insulin. So it crept up a little bit, and I called my doc up and I said, we need to talk. I subsequently seen a specialist, mostly to interview him as a potential adult endo for my kids when they got to be 18. And I went in and I told him that. I said, look, I'm here under the pretext of me, but let's talk about my kids and you. And he said, yeah, well, you're on the continuum. You've got type 2 diabetes. What you're doing with diet and exercise are as effective as, I could put you on meds and they wouldn't be, if you continue to lose some weight and you continue to be active, you're going to get the same outcome. So that was a long, long time ago, and I never went back to him. And my kids moved to different places, and they found endos. Or my son moved to New York, and he found an endo there. So that part of it didn't pan out. But I called my doc up and I said I need to go on metformin because I talked to docs and primary cares and endos and at diabetes conferences, and they said this is what you should do. So I figured I was getting great expert advice, and I put myself on metformin about a year ago, and I got a lot more serious about activity. So you'd mentioned Strava, and that is a really great tool for me to stay motivated because I see you running, and it's really funny because it shows us a map, and sometimes we are on the same trail, maybe even the same day, and I'm always looking to see if I see you running the other way. It hasn't happened yet, but someday it may. I think it's hysterical. But I got real interested in bicycling, and I think last year I rode about 1,200 miles, which
wow.
I felt like was a real accomplishment.
I would say so.
And that is part of my diabetes. So it's sort of one of those wonderful side benefits. I really enjoy bicycling, and I wasn't making time for it, and now I do. And having people on Strava talk about their runner, you just see it. It's like Facebook for people that run or bicycle. And it just kind of like, you know what, I didn't do that today. I'm friends with these people and they're doing it. I should do it too. And it helps keep me motivated. That's really important now that it's getting cold and I'm using the indoor version, which is nowhere near as much fun.
Yeah, I have to say that indoor exercise versus outdoor, and that's the thing. Like I was running a lot when it was hot out, and I mean, running is not my favorite thing. I'm much more into lifting weights, but I also enjoy cardio. I like being in the woods, which is where, like you said, Pennypack Trail. Which for me is lovely because Philadelphia, you don't think of it as being, this lush forest, but right in the middle of all the city and all that stuff, we have this great, beautiful trail. But so I wanted to ask you a quick question. So you said you started the metformin about a year ago. So for everybody who might be watching this type 2, have you noticed, so would you say the difference, have you noticed the difference in your blood sugars? And how long ago did you start the biking? Did you start the biking and the metformin around the same time? And did you notice any differences like right away? What were your observations?
So I started biking about a year and a half ago. And when I started, I couldn't ride more than, I don't think I could ride a mile. I was in really lousy shape. I took that very same black bike that I bought years and years ago and was stunned that the tires would hold air. I rode it a little bit around my town and I was just dead. And I just slowly started building the thing up. And Adam Brown at Diatribe caught wind that I was bicycling. So he invited me to join Strava, and I kept that email. I kept reading it and then saving it as unread in my email for 2 months. Adam is just this super fit, stud of a guy. And I viewed it as a competition. And there's no way I can compete with Adam. And finally, I opened it up and I would just see, well, Adam rode today. And I think, well, maybe I could go ride. And I realized that the app is not there as a competition. It's there as an attaboy. And so I would log a ride and I would get responses from you or Adam or Lane or whoever that just a like. And that kind of made me feel good. And it made me feel like I was in this little community of people that were trying to be a little bit healthier, and each of us in our own way. And that motivated me to keep going.
I think what you just said is a huge distinction about, the competition aspect. I mean, I'm just not a competitive person in general. I don't know if I get that from my mom, who's like very like a hippie-ish, you know, like let's just love everybody, and you know, it's not a competition. It's we're each on our own journey, which I think is completely congruent with the name of your blog, which is Your Diabetes May Vary. It's just like everybody's, not only will our diabetes vary, but our experience in life will vary. Our experience with exercise will vary, everything, because we're all individuals. So I love that you made that distinction. And then you, instead of, you know, feeling like you had to compete with Adam or anyone else, you said, you know what, well, this is my journey and I'm going to go do this. And just for anybody watching who doesn't know what Strava, it's Strava. It's a free app. Anybody can get it. And then you can just follow or like or follow anybody that you might know that's on it. It's super easy, just like any social media site. You can grab it on your smartphone. So I encourage everybody to get it because it really is a pretty awesome little app. But then you made that distinction. And so obviously, just from seeing your activity on Strava on my end, once you made that distinction, would you say that your activity had picked up a lot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it got to be the point where, you know, I would see Mike would go out for a ride or a run. And I got to know Mike at the Unconference.
Yeah. Mike Barry is an inspiration to all of us. And
he's a great guy. Crazy, just enough crazy to be a whole lot of fun. So, you know, it just inspires me. You know, like he always titles his run whatever he's listening to. I always listen to exactly the same playlist, and I actually use that to keep, you know, my rhythm of riding going, my cadence going, and also kind of as a real quiet reminder, because I know, like, I listen to Little Feat's Waiting for Columbus, and if I get to the end of Dixie Chicken, that's about 25 minutes, and you know, have I returned to the starting point yet, or have I reached certain goals on the Pennypack Trail? And it's just sort of a real quiet way of keeping pace. You know, and it's not a stopwatch, although there is a stopwatch function. But to me, it's just sort of, you know, am I in the rhythm? Am I in the zone? And it keeps me going. So, you know, I did that for a while. And then I went on the metformin because I think I needed to. And I think together they've been, you know, useful in bringing my weight down. I came up a little bit over the holiday, and that's, you know, I don't think I'm unique in that, and I need to take it back down. And then last summer, my wife is a swimmer, so we went to visit some friends who have a place at Lake Wallenpopack, and there's an island, I don't know, like half a mile, 3/4 of a mile across the lake from their house. So my wife jumps in and she swims to the lake and back, and her words literally getting out of the water were, buy me a bicycle, I'm going to do a triathlon.
Wow.
So if she's going to do a triathlon, I'm going to do one too. So now I'm trying to learn how to swim in the same way that I bike. And it's really a learning process because I don't know the technique of good swimming. I don't cruise. It's like I get out of breath, and I think part of that I'm reading is because I don't exhale enough, and you build up CO2 in your lungs, and that makes you want to get out, all this weird stuff. So I'm trying to learn how to do that, and then the next step when it gets warm is I'm going to go out and get the running up, and we're going to try to do a very, what they call them, sprint triathlons, one of the short ones, hopefully in the beginning of the summer. So to me, that's become a goal, and it's a goal that we're working together on in our own ways. So, you know, part of the reason that the bike is behind me is that I bought my wife shoes and clip-in pedals for Christmas to put on her bike, and they take a little bit of learning, so she can learn in here on a stand where you can't fall over. And it's just something we can do together and be healthy together. The swimming is not coming naturally to me, but, you know, I swam a half a mile 2 days ago, and I'll probably swim again. You know, I'm going to try to swim 2 or 3 times a week and see how that goes. So I think that's all part of it. And it's only tertiary related to the diabetes. I mean, it will have a beneficial impact on my health, but the real impact is I'm enjoying the riding. I think eventually I'll enjoy the swimming. I don't know if I'll ever enjoy running. But I think I'll have a good time doing the events.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very real success. And that's the kind of success that I think needs to be defined in diabetes, is that it's not about your number. It's not a numbers game. It's not that I win my A1C competition. I think that's a marker for, are you having fun in your life? Are you making changes in your life that are sustainable because you want to do them?
Yeah.
You know, I want to go riding. I get frustrated if it's too rainy, and I'll go out when it's cold, if it's not too cold. But I just want to get out and go up and down the Pennypack Trail. And for anybody in Philadelphia, the Pennypack Trail is awesome. You can go from the Delaware River almost to the Montgomery County line on a single trail.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing trail that, I mean, I grew up in Philadelphia, so I'm aware of it. My father and mother were both always nature people, so I've, been in there. But, my husband moving here from South Jersey, he thought Philadelphia was just this like city, industrial, urban, this and that. And, he's a huge outdoor person, and he just goes running on the trail. He doesn't care if it's friggin' 20 below zero, he'll be out there running. But that's that Army mentality. He doesn't, nothing bothers him. But it's just so, it is a lovely trail to be on. But so just so I'm clear, were you into biking or any type of exercising before your diagnosis, or did that come after the diagnosis?
Not really. I kept thinking that I needed to be more active, and I could tell my cardiovascular was awful. And I would get so involved in doing things that I didn't make time to get out and ride. And one of the real, or exercise, and what I've found is the real beauty for me of riding my bike, even though I take my phone along, I'm using it to play music. And, I may get an email, I may get a text message, but I ignore them. And I just get out there and cruise, and I get into this sort of relaxed mind frame where all I really care about is, am I turning the pedals over? I've got a little bit of competitive in me, which I'm sure people are not surprised about. Like, so if I see someone in front of me on a bike, I want to pass them in the worst possible way. And it kills me when somebody passes me. And when I was starting, I was getting passed all the time, and just pissed me off. And I still get passed, and I still want to keep up with the people that are faster than me, even if they're Adam and they're 30 years younger than me, and they're on a far better bike. And I try to let that go, and just, maybe Fat Man in a Bathtub will come up on the Little Feat playlist, and I'll remember what's what, and I'll just get back to the rhythm of the music and just go. But I enjoy the weather. The trails in Pennsylvania are great. Like you say, there's wonderful nature scenery. There's the upper part of the Pennypack Trail in my little town, and this is a quarter mile from my house, runs along the Pennypack Creek and is just stunningly beautiful. And I just try to, and I don't really think it's one with nature, but maybe that's really what people say they're one with nature mean when they're one with nature.
It does. And I'm kind of one of those people, because I'm very, I don't know if the right word is spiritual. I'm not like, but I am heavily into meditation, and I do yoga, and I do recommend all the time that one of the biggest stress relievers, because we're always under so much stress, especially people with diabetes, we have just so many more decisions to make in a day than the average person. But becoming one with nature, as, foo-foo as that might sound, the reality of it is that when you're out there, and you don't even necessarily have to be in the woods, you could just be like sitting on the grass somewhere. But the thing is that you're, like you said, you disconnect from all that other kind of like digital distraction and all that other stuff, and you're just kind of breathing the air, and you're feeling if you're on the bike, you're feeling the air hit your face, and if you're seeing some type of scenery like the creek or some the trees, and it does. And you even said you're in a different mindset. It does change your mindset. So even if you are like super stressed about something, you go out there, you focus your energy on taking a walk, taking a run, taking a bike ride, just doing anything out there, not in front of a screen, like this, you can't help but feel the difference in the change in your mindset. And I've had that experience myself so many times that I think it's really important for everybody to kind of make that distinction. And the other thing that I think is really important that, particularly with your story, is that there's so many type 2s out there. I talk to so many of them all the time, and, they may have this belief that's not necessarily serving them, that, well, I'm too old to start biking, or I'm out of shape, or I can't do something that's like, but that to me, I always try to, use my mom as a you know, an example, she's 64, you know, last year she just started doing yoga. She does it regularly. She hikes, you know, there's no age limit on starting a new exercise routine. And I think that you're a very shining example of that. It's like, hey, look, you know, I just started this a year ago, and, you know, you're comparing yourself to Adam, who's 30 years younger, but who cares? That doesn't matter. And you're doing your own thing.
And you know what? The comparison to Adam isn't, you know, Adam rides farther than I do, and I've done the math. He's faster than I am. Fortunately, he's in California, and I'm in Pennsylvania, so I don't have to have him pass me on the trail. But the comparison is that we're both out there doing it, and we're both doing that, and I don't know how to meditate. And I'm sure I'm going to misuse this term, but there's a certain Zen quality to it where I get in the rhythm, and the playlist is just right. And exactly what you said, all the screen space dissolves away. And there's some trails that I go to that I know I'm going to see wild deer if I go on that trail. And there's other trails where, you know, I'm pretty sure I'm going to see some wildlife. If I go up to Pennypack, I'm just going to hear the rushing water if I go north from my house. I just know it's going to be a beautiful sound. I've gone out there right after, and in fact, right during. I've been caught out in heavy rainstorms. And then it's like a rushing torrent, and that's kind of exciting too. And it's just a lovely mindset that you get off the pressure. You know, I've talked to Christelle about, you know, meditating, and I was like, I just don't understand how to do that. And then I explained what I do on a bike. She goes, you're meditating.
Yeah. And I think what you just said, that you were misusing the word Zen, I would have to say that you were using it exactly right. That's exactly what Zen is. You're just in the flow. You're in the flow. You're just doing your own thing. Everything seems to be kind of synchronous, you know, working. You're hearing the river. You're seeing the wildlife. You're moving the bike. You're doing all these things are rushing together and happening at once, but it just all seems so gels right together perfectly. And I think that's what Zen really is. And I don't know how to meditate either. I mean, I listen to something in my head, and like Deepak Chopra guides me on what to do. I just breathe and listen to him talking. Like, I don't think meditation is a skill as much as it is the skill that you need to meditate is patience, which we were just talking about prior to starting this interview.
Yeah. So I think that's really well put. And you know, I get out there and I'm aware of my breathing. I know that if I'm not breathing heavy enough, I can pick up the pace a little bit, and I enjoy the sensation of speed on a bicycle. I'm not really going all that fast, but it feels fast, and if you fall over, it hurts. So that's fun. But I'm just sort of aware of the sound of the bicycle, the sound of my breathing, and if I'm going by the creek, the sound of the creek, and it's just a stillness with the rest of my mind, which is for me very rare because I'm always doing something. And I think that it's been very valuable and for me to be connected to friends in diabetes land with both type 1 and type 2 to motivate me to do that. And the benefit to me is I hope it's doing the right thing for my diabetes, but the bigger picture is I'm doing the right thing for me. And like you said, there's a sort of a spiritual component to it, just a calmness to it that is really valuable. If I get there with swimming, that's going to be fantastic. I did get an underwater compartment for an old iPad, and I'm now playing, you know, get in the pool and swim through Dixie Chicken. So it's that same old classic album. I keep playing it over and over again.
Yeah, we all have a thing that works for us, and you know, you find it, it works for you, you do it. You know, I use Pandora. I have a few channels that I like to, you know, certain channels that I like to do while I'm running, certain channels that I like to do while I'm weightlifting, and you know, it's just whatever works for you. So I've loved this conversation up until this point so much. I could sit here, and honestly, funny enough, you know, just from the few times that we've met in person, I love the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you about spirituality and Zen, because it's like when you meet Bennet, like right off, he's like business, like, you know, let's move this along, let's get this done. Like you said, you're like, that's just kind of the personality that you have. But I love that I like see you talking about this. It just brings me so much joy. And I'm sure it's going to probably surprise a few people that end up watching. They're like, oh, look at Bennet talking about spirituality. I love it. But I do want to highlight some of the other amazing things that you do, because outside of your own, you know, well-being that you are obviously very invested in taking care of, and you do put a lot of diligence into that, you also put a lot of work into taking care of other people with diabetes and our community. So I mentioned, you know, the Strip Safely, the Drinking with Diabetes resource, and I'm a huge fan of DPAC. do it every time I get an update in my email list. I click and I, send the letter, and I get all the responses from the senators and all this other stuff. So why don't you, just do a little touch on each of those, and I will link to everything that you do. But what Bennet does is he allows us, as people who don't want to necessarily be as heavily involved in the kind of political side of things, to actually have a voice to help new laws get passed that we as people with diabetes need to have our voices heard to get done, because the more people that speak up about it, the more likely laws are actually going to get changed. And he pushes an easy button for us to press to do that. So talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot more people need to know about and be involved in this.
Sure. So, for me, the very fortunate thing is that the tail end of all that is the getting out on my bike and the Zen and the spirituality. It actually came from being involved with the community. And we have a spectacular community, and the online community is gaining participation as it should in leaps and bounds. And that gives each of us the opportunity to kind of do different things where we have a particular skill set. And one of my skill sets is being a pain in the ass. I had a friend in elementary school. We were in the same homeroom all through elementary school, actually into college. And he said, I could tell it was spring when you picked a fight with a teacher. I just have this I want to take on authority gene. And in diabetes land, I can take that gene and say, there's issues in policy that need to be addressed. And I can focus on policy, safe in knowing that you and Carrie and Christelle and 1,000 other people are in your own niche doing the connecting people together that is so necessary. So, I go to the Unconference and I connect with a whole bunch of people, and I come home and I feel empowered by that. And getting to know other people like you and Adam, and that's what's getting me empowered to do what's right for me. And that's critically necessary. And I think that's like the foundational level of our community, is that we're there to help each other do our best. What our best is different for each of us, but we can each do our best. And one of the things that I can do is, instead of replicating what's going on already, I kind of have an interest in politics and law, and I can go read all that stuff, and I can go read all the just god-awful minutia, and for some strange reason I find it interesting. I am really weird. And I can try to simplify that to terms that make sense to everybody else, and then give them an opportunity to act. So I always make the comparison that there's a lot of people with diabetes, and we're probably not as effective as some other disease states. And maybe even if you take it out to just lobbying in general, the gold standard of lobbying, like it or not, is the gun lobby. And then one of the reasons they're effective is their people will write about an issue multiple times. The guy that wants to take the AK-47 to Starbucks isn't going to write a letter about that once. He's going to write about it a bunch of times. And I'm using that to be facetious. And if you're, there's a Second Amendment, and I believe in the Constitution, so you have a right to guns. And I think that, like everything else, there's just an example of passion there. If we can make caring about diabetes as simple as the NRA makes gun actions, then we can be really successful. So learning from them, one of the things is click and send. So we created DPAC to be the easy button. If you want to send a letter, there's a bill in Congress about continuous glucose monitors and having them funded by Medicare. Mm-hmm. So first of all, that's a fairly small subset of the world, and it's also a really arcane thing. Like, what bill number is that? And then who would I write? Some people may not even know who their representative is in Congress. I mean, it's not unusual. Or what's their address? I don't know their email address or their Twitter handle. And what would I say? So you go to diabetespac.org. There's a menu bar that says action, and you click that, and there's a whole bunch of things, and you just click one, and it'll tell you a little bit about the issue. You push the big blue Act Now button. It'll figure out who your member of Congress is based on your zip code. It'll figure out who your senators are based on your zip code. And if it's that particular issue of the CGM, it'll figure out whether they have already co-sponsored the bill or not. So in my case, neither of our senators has co-sponsored the bill in the Senate, but my representative, who's new, and I always struggle to remember his name because he's only been in there for a year and a half, Brendan somebody or other. So I'm into this stuff and I can't remember the guy's name. He has supported it. So you click the letter and DPAC will draft the letter, and it's pretty much the same letter to both the senators saying, please support this. And to the guy who's already supported it, it says, thanks for supporting. So it's important that we don't look like dopes. We don't want to go banging on the door and saying, hey, guy, you should support our bill. And the guy's going to go, hey, I already have. You're not paying attention to me.
Right.
So we have a back end that figures all that stuff out and makes it real easy. Now, the other thing we always do is we always leave these letters open. So if I click the CGM letter, I could easily go in there, and at the first paragraph could be, hey, you know what, my name's Bennet Dunlap. I have 2 kids that live with type 1 diabetes. I'm aware that CGM has made a tremendous difference in their lives, and I would like to make sure that the people that have been successful with type 1 diabetes for 40 and 50 years that are now in Medicare can continue to be successful. I'll put my own blurbage in there, and then it's the same boilerplate letter. So it's always customizable. You can completely erase our letter and put in something completely different if you wanted to. That's fine. You can change the subject letter. We just want people to be counted.
Yeah.
And that's because politics is a game of counting.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I just want to jump in and say a couple of things that for me, just like, sorry, I'm going to get back here. I'm going to put myself down. But for me, I don't, like everyone else, it's like, I have a million things to do. I don't want to, find that representative's email address or whatever. So I go, and the first time I heard about DPAC, I think it might have been at the Unconference where you're maybe just rolling it out. But I mean, it's literally you go in, you put your zip code in, it brings up your representatives. You can pick, and now I just sent one for every single item that was up there because why not? It only takes a couple seconds, click, click, click. But if it's the CGM that's, important to you because, you want to make sure your 65-year-old mother, brother, grandfather is able to get the CGM, it's literally click the thing. It auto fills in your representatives. They already wrote this lovely letter that you don't, so if you want to put in a blurb about yourself, my grandfather needs the CGM, and, obviously personal stories are very touching and, might make even more of a difference. But if you don't want to do that, it's still going to make the difference to just click and send that letter, because that letter is going to come up on your representative's desk. And the more times that letter comes up on the representative's desk is the more times that representative knows that more people are speaking up, hey, this is important to me. And we're their constituency. They need to listen to what we're saying. And as you mentioned, as a diabetes community, type 1 and type 2 combined, because I don't think we need to be separating ourselves, because we all need CGMs, we all need, different medications, we all need all of this stuff, we all need safety and, hospital care, all of this other stuff. The more I was doing some research, and I was thinking something like it was, and again, don't quote me here, but it was basically like people with just cancer, not even just one kind of cancer, but like all the types of cancer combined, I think was like 6 million or something. And us as people with diabetes, we're 30 million, but they're getting legislation changed left and right and day and night. And not because the severity of the disease is better or worse, or that's not the point. And the point is just like the gun lobby, the people with cancer are much more adamant about speaking up on a regular basis and getting their agendas heard by their legislative representatives. And it really is, I just find it to be so important because, unlike you, I don't find reading lobby and law fun, and I don't want to do it. But the fact that I'm so grateful because I do want to make a difference, I do. And if it's just a few clicks, hell, can I do it more than once? I'll do it, every 5 minutes if that's what it's going to take. But I think people just need to know, look, if you're one of, the other thing is, you don't have to have diabetes to do this. You love someone with diabetes, the more people, you're a parent of a child with diabetes and you want to make sure your child gets the proper medical care in a hospital, you just click and send, or you ask your friends and you send it out an email, hey, can you just click and send this to your representative? We need to come together as a group and speak up. And I think that's what DPAC lets us do with literally next to no effort.
Absolutely. And it's not just the federal government. It's not just Congress that needs to hear from us. You know, we need to be active in our states as well. And there's things that happen in states that really matter. So, you know, I love to talk about success with diabetes. That's why I was so thrilled when you came on. Like, well, tell me your success story with diabetes, because I think that's the conversation we should be having about diabetes is what am I doing to be successful? And there's a wonderful success in North Carolina that came out of an awful tragedy. So there was a very young child, and the parents were taking her to the doctor, and the doctor was going, these are cold and flu symptoms. It's the flu. It's going to go away. And very sadly, they kept going back, and finally, and it was too late. They said, well, this might be type 1 diabetes. And by the time they caught it, it was too late, and the child died. And that's super, super sad. That should never happen. And as a result, there was an effort in North Carolina to pass a piece of legislation called Regans Rule. And what Regans Rule does is it requires that at children's well visits, you know, you take your baby in, they're well, but you take them to the doctor, you know, just checkups, that there be education on the symptoms of type 1 diabetes provided, so that Regan's parents would have known those symptoms and maybe known to say, wait a second, maybe this is something else. That's a great state initiative. And some of the people that were involved in that reached out to DPAC and said, you know, actually, I heard about what they were doing. I said, can we help? How can we help? It's something I say all the time. How can I help? So I worked with them, and we created a letter, and it's on DPAC. And you can go to actions, and the drop down, it's like keep kids safe or something like that. And it will send a letter to your state elected officials, your governor, your state senators, your state representatives, and it will cite Regans Rule and say, we should do that here. And it will do that for every state except for North Carolina, because North Carolina already did it. So if you live in North Carolina and you click that, it's not going to send a letter because your guys and gals in your state legislature already took care of business. The rest of us can do that. There's other issues that are state issues. Like here in Pennsylvania, there was the Department of Health sent out a letter to hospitals and nursing home facilities, warning them about spreading hospital-acquired infections with diabetes testing supplies. And apparently there were cases in Pennsylvania where hepatitis was spread around a facility because of improper use of sharps. So that's an issue where we can go to our states and say, look, this shouldn't be happening. We had an initiative on that at DPAC. I think it's still on that drop-down list. If not, it will be shortly. We're in the process of making the site a little bit more friendly. So, you know, that's the kind of thing where you just point and shoot and go. I'm sure that people in elected offices want to know what the problems are, want to know how they can be helpful, but they don't know this minutia. Hell, we don't even know this stuff most of the time, and we're in the diabetes community. So when we're aware of something, we should pass it on. So that is one of the things that DPAC is going to be doing in 2016, and we actually started it in December a month ago. We're going to run a monthly series called Ask an Expert, and we're going to bring in the caliber of people that if you attended AADE or ADA or one of the really big scientific sessions, we're going to get the best of those that are relevant to patients and advocacy, and have people do a webinar. And you can sign up on dpac.com. We're going to promote one every month. This month, as a matter of fact, we're going to be talking about hospital-acquired infections, and it's not on the webpage yet, but I believe that we have an agreement from someone from CDC to speak at that. So that's, you know, talk about an expert, right? Next month, we're going to be talking with George Grunberger, who's the president of the American Academy of Clinical Endocrinologists. And that's the caliber of people we're going to have doing a little presentation, and then there'll be an opportunity to act. December was on Medicare's bidding of diabetes testing supplies. So as people may or may not know, Medicare put in a bidding process, and the lowest price wins the testing supplies, test strips.
This just enrages me. I try not to get enraged.
So, you know, and there's supposed to be a range of products available to people. The diabetes educators did some blind cold calls and discovered that the range of people isn't being offered to people. Our speaker's name was Dr. Gary Cochran of the National Minority Quality Forum. Did some research, and he looked at Medicare's very own data, and he discovered that when Medicare said there weren't any problems, part of that was because they started with a new cohort that they looked at every quarter. And he said, well, that doesn't make sense. You should look at the same cohort over time. And when he did that using Medicare's own data, he discovered that people that had acquired insulin and test strips in one quarter, as this bidding process came in, there were some people in the population that stopped getting test strips but continued to get insulin. How do you manage insulin without test strips? His data shows that there was an increase in hospitalizations in the test markets, that there was an increase in mortality. And if there's an increase in hospitalizations, there's an increase in costs associated with that. And I believe the data shows that they spent more money on these related costs than they saved by bidding test strips. So that's available on DPAC's site if you want to go listen to Gary's presentation. It's there. If you want to click and send a message to your elected officials and say, look, until we can figure out if this process is working right or not, it shouldn't be happening. We have a letter you can send to your elected officials to do that. And it's very much part and parcel of how we hope to move forward in 2016. As we get closer to the election, we hope to be able to have a vehicle for people to write their candidates for elected office, particularly Congress, on issues and say, hey, here's an issue, where do you stand on it? And I think that if candidates hear the issues before they're elected, they may be a little bit more interested in supporting our issues when one of them gets elected.
Yeah, I think personally for me, as someone who just, you know, I came into the world a few years ago. I mean, I've been diabetes 25 years ago, having the desire to be an advocate. I mean, I like to advocate for individuals, you know, personal choices and us coming together as a community and how we can, you know, choose to make ourselves feel better by our choices. But for people who are out there, for, you know, the millions of people that are just out there wanting to do something to help the community but aren't sure what that is, you know, a lot of people say that, you know, writing a blog is the best way or the easiest way. But I have to say personally that this is a million times easier than even writing a blog. And I'm not saying not to write a blog, but I'm saying if you are out there, you have diabetes, you care about other people with diabetes, you want to make an effect or have some effect in the diabetes community, sending this, you know, click and send letter to the political world through DPAC is the easiest, most simple way to become an instant diabetes advocate. And I really do believe that that is, I mean, there are a million things that can be done, but this allows you to go from passive kind of stand by to I'm a diabetes advocate in just a couple of clicks. And I just think that is invaluable to especially people who want to have a voice, but they're not yet sure how they want their voice to be heard, but they are sure that they want to have a voice. I think that this is it. And I will continue to promote DPAC forever. And, you know, I always say if there's anything going on, I'm going to put it on my page, you know, anything, because I just think this is so important. And
so coming up in 2016, we're going to be a lot better about communicating. We're going to be having regular newsletters that will feature not only information about previous and coming Ask an Expert series. We have a scorecard that I think is actually really unique. So if you go to diabetespac.org, up in the menu there, it's going to say scorecard. You click that and it lists every single member of the United States Congress and 7 pieces of legislation that could make life better for people with diabetes. CGM is one of them. And it lists whether every member of Congress has co-sponsored that bill or not, or co-sponsored one of the other bills or not. And you can look to see, you can expect to see that become more functional in 2016. We hope to make that so you click where it says supporter, and it will send a tweet that says thank you. And if it says ask, it'll send a tweet that says please support this bill. That's coming. We're going to really encourage people to view themselves as members of DPAC, so that they feel like they have some personal ownership in it, that they're invited to the webinars, that they can join that they can act, that they have, that this isn't our voice, Bennet and Christelle and DPAC's voice. This is the voice of people with diabetes, the larger diabetes community. Look, we need a robust diabetes infrastructure, and that includes educators, doctors, labs. If we need pharma making supplies, we need the drug companies making us innovative drugs. We need almost all of what we do, all of those people do, is critical to keeping people with diabetes healthy. We desperately need insulin. We need better sensors. We need quality test strips. All of that matters. And we encourage people to say, hey, I have a voice in that. And if people, like I said, people came to us and said, hey, we got this thing going on at the state level. Our response was, how can we help?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I can't say how important I think it is and how much I stand behind it, because it's just so, you guys are making it possible for us to, like I said, that infrastructure that needs to come into place, you're allowing for that kind of foundation to be built so that can happen. And I think it's super important. And although I want to sit here and talk to you about a million other things, I really do want to kind of pan back to, what do you feel? I mean, as a man who obviously lives with type 2 diabetes, and as a father of 2 children who live with type 1, over your years of experience, what would you consider to be, for anyone out there who's thinking, well, other than going to DPAC and, making a difference, what are your top 3 tips for thriving with diabetes, both, in your own life, in your children's life, and just in life in general?
So I would say DPAC's probably 4. It probably isn't even in the top 3. The most important thing, I think, for anyone with any type of diabetes is to just get Zen. We were talking about Zen. So get in some quiet space and realize that you're not alone. I think most people with diabetes kind of feel sometimes stigma and shame and privatize that. So first, you're not alone. And the second flows directly from that, and that is to connect with other people and not to copy what they do, but to understand that there's other people that are working with diabetes to be successful, there are other people being successful, and that there's a sort of psychosocial component that flows from that. So go to the Diabetes Unconference. Go to Friends for Life if you have kids with diabetes. Join whatever there is for you to join. Go online, participate on Twitter, whatever your thing is. Find other people and just be willing to admit that you have diabetes. I find it amazing. I'll be out riding and I'll, be at the parking lot, putting my bike on my rack if I've driven to some new trail. And, inevitably you strike up a conversation with somebody that's not too dissimilar from you. And so I'm talking to all the old 55-year-old guys. And, we talk about the trail and the quality of the ride. And I inevitably will say, yeah, and it's good for my blood sugar. And 9 times out of 10, the other guy goes, yeah, me too.
Yep.
And it's just that simple, that you, instead of like it's a bad thing, you just connect with people and say, yeah, and this is part of that. I mean, I'm not riding for my blood sugar. I'm riding because that's a damn cool trail. Just happens to help my blood sugar. And I guess number 3 is don't feel like there is somebody else's formula that you got to copy. So often you're like, well, this is what I do and it's the right way. I don't eat any bread and I do this other thing. And I'm like, well, that might work for you, but I like a roll every now and then. Maybe I should eat fewer of them, but my success isn't going to be your success. So your diabetes may vary. Listen to other people tell their success stories, support them, give them an attaboy, pat them on the back, click their Strava, and don't make it a competition and don't make it have to be the same. Take your own path. And I think that's where we started. So
yep, exactly.
Yeah, brought it around full circle. And then number 4, DPAC.org.
Yeah. So I'm definitely, so guys, so if you're wondering, I'm going to link, and hopefully you'll go directly, immediately, maybe even you'll put this on pause back, because people who watch these know I link all of your links the person that I'm interviewing below the YouTube and below the blog. So you can go and link right over from here and go make a difference, become an instant advocate. Or if you have already done it, but you haven't supported the Regans Rule, you want to get in there and do a little bit more, go do that right now. I totally agree with everything you say. I love that you say about that whole, I always say, I love to listen to what other people are teaching. I love to support and celebrate other people's successes, but I feel like everybody needs to just kind of grab onto the mindsets, like, listen to find out what's possible for other people. Something that they say sounds cool to you, grab it and try it out and try it on for size. And something that they say that doesn't jive with you, you're like, toss it out the window. And either way, it's not bad, but you just, but instead of tuning out, I think what you said that's most important is that do that, pat them on the back and give them that attaboy, listen to them and celebrate other people's successes. And that way, I feel like the more we celebrate other people's successes, the more inspired we feel to have our own. And I think that's really what I got out of what you said, which is, I think, super important. So
I love the idea that we talk about succeeding with diabetes, because that is not the common conversation. And I bet that everybody is better off if we talk about success. Who doesn't want to talk about their successes?
I totally agree. That's one of the main reasons I started this whole entire interview series over a year ago, is because I wanted to showcase as many people who are willing to chat openly about their successes in hopes of, grabbing the attention of somebody else who might be struggling and hoping, saying, oh, wow, that person did that. Well, maybe I'll give it a go. And that's really what I'm trying to do here. So I genuinely appreciate you, taking the time to come here and chat with me and share all your stuff. And there's so much more stuff that I would like to chat with. Maybe we'll do a follow-up interview at another time, because you really do so many amazing things for our community. But until then, thank you, Bennett, for taking the time to join me today. And I'm sure that I can't wait to write a little blurb about this and say, come watch me talk to Bennett Dunlap about Zen.
Awesome. Well, you're very welcome, and it was truly a delight to chat with you. Hopefully we run into each other on the Penny Pack Trail.
Hopefully. If not, I'll see you in the Unconference in a couple months. So
I'm looking forward to it. And
all
folks who don't know about the Unconference, look it up, come join. There's going to be multiple Unconferences this year, and it's going to be great fun.
Yeah, I couldn't be more of a supporter of that either. So come see me and Bennett at the Unconference in Las Vegas in March, or come to the one in Atlantic City in September, and hopefully we will get to meet everybody out there in person. Until then, I will see everybody on the next episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Take care.